an advantage for us. But even an incompetent tyrant can still do a tremendous amount of damage, right? One of the things that Donald Trump and his administration has done so far is the chaos that unfolded in the Strait of Hormuz. That's continuing. The strikes are continuing. And the American, the U.S. Central Command has expanded on the targeting on sites. They're hitting bridges now. They're hitting civilian infrastructure now. People are suspecting that the American military is making a move on the Iranian coastline, potentially with boots on the ground. There could be an invasion. I don't know how much evidence there is for that. I know that it would be a chaotic situation. It would be devastating, and it would be objectively unpopular, especially because it's not going to be an easy military operation to conduct. Lot of U.S. casualties. That's what we're looking at. Sending young American men and women into the meat grinder to turn into dust under tens of thousands of Iranian flying lawnmowers with explosive ordnance attached. Iran, in retaliation, has started hitting more targets in places like Bahrain and in Kuwait and also Qatar after the United States struck the Iranian bridges.
Are coming under fire in Kuwait today. Iran struck a power and desalination plant there, prompting urgent public warnings from the government. Those warnings were to conserve water and electricity even as temperatures soar into the mid-40s on the Celsius scale. Iran also says it targeted US assets in Oman, Jordan and elsewhere, and it is threatening the ports of its Gulf neighbors. This all coming after an escalation in US attacks, including strikes on bridges in the south of Iran in what was a sixth straight night of bombing. CNN's Nick Robertson joining us today from Jerusalem. And Nick, 30 days after the, very what felt like historic signing of that MOU, it does seem as if things have escalated in a way that makes it feel very uncomfortable in region. What do you make of these developments and where we are at?
I think, obviously, we're on an escalatory military cycle. I think that because neither side has said we're outrightly scrapping the MOU sort of remains marginalized completely on the sidelines of these military operations, but it's still a document that's intact, and one can possibly see a time where either side can recommend going back to that, having decided that through the military means at the moment they're not getting where they want to. So I think on the diplomatic front, that document, although it's no use to anyone at the moment, can be, again, useful in the future because it is the blueprint for the way out of the current situation. But if you just look at the range of these strikes that are going on, and break it down very, very simply here, both sides have a reason for hitting the targets that they hit. Iran says it hits U.S. military bases and assets in the region. Clearly, last night, it hit a civilian facility in Kuwait that is a huge vulnerability for all Gulf countries, the desalination and power plants that go with them, that provide the AC, that provide the clean water that people drink. For most of the Gulf countries, these are absolutely essential and indispensable. So they're a massive pressure point. So Iran's ratcheted up to that level. If you look at what the United States is doing and understand how militaries work, they won't just be throwing their munitions around, we'll put some here, we'll put some there. They'll be thinking of what are we planning on doing next week? Where do we think we might be in a week's time or 2 weeks' time? So we'll have operations that shape us towards that. Number one, making sure that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be safe for the travel of vessels, which means taking out infrastructure, port facilities along the Strait of Hormuz. But it's going beyond that. It's trying to get to the infrastructure that links those areas around the Strait of Hormuz, particularly.
America hits civilian infrastructure first? Yes. America is taking Iran up the escalation ladder. I see a lot of people in the chat asking, like, why aren't they striking Israel? Why aren't they striking Israel? Okay, that's part of the reason why they're not striking Israel. They're only going tit for tat. America hits military installations and radar facilities. They strike back at radar facilities and military installations in the Gulf. If Israel were to join back on the conflict, if Israel were to get involved in these rounds of strikes, they would start hitting Israel as well. So they're holding on to all of their cards. They're not trying to blow their load. I think it's a fairly smart and fairly reliable tactic. I think it's a fairly smart and fairly reliable tactic. They're only hitting countries that are actually using HIMARS and using their American military bases to hit. Give me your load. Okay. God, I got to stop using terms like this. They're only going up the escalation ladder if America increases the intensity. If America expands on the strike targets and starts hitting civilian territory, then they respond in kind. Okay? Because remember, while Iran is winning this, as far as we can see and observe, that doesn't change the reality that, like, Iran could not militarily withstand the United States of America if the United States of America was far removed and was not financially involved with these Gulf states. Iran can only hit whatever it can hit within its reach. Okay? So obviously, the proximity to Iran makes it a lot more difficult for Iran to hit Israel and virtually impossible for Iran to hit the United States of America. Right? So that's the reason why they're hitting the Gulf states, because the Gulf states are allowing American munitions to be launched from their territories. So Iran is responding in kind.
Bandar Abbas and some of the other ports along there to deeper inside of Iran, as well as denying other ports, as well as targeting Bushehr, where there is an Iranian military airbase.
I covered this yesterday.
Which is about less than 1 minute's fighter jet flight.
Max Fisher, China quietly saved the world last month. Dude, what is happening? The Donald Harris team is going nutty mode. Maybe they're no longer CIA. I covered this yesterday. But yes, China saved Israel's ass. Popstonox tweet is making you look very bad, my dude. Give him the boss call. I already did. I thought he fucking deleted it. I don't know why he does stuff like that from time to time. Okay. Well, I don't know what I actually don't even know what you're referencing, to be honest. It could be any number of different fucking tweets. The Postinox tweets off of my stream. You think it's because USA cuts? You think it's because USA cuts came in, USA defunded? So Donald was like, I got to find a new source of revenue? No, I'm just kidding. I guess it's because, the CIA is China, the deep state, according to Donald Trump. So maybe that's what's going on. That's what's up.
From Karg Island, which again has been floated in the deep past as a possible target. That's where we seem to be.
Yeah, and Tehran issuing threats over the Gulf's oil lifeline at this point. It does seem as if it is, though, widening its target list. Syria, Iraq, Jordan. We already know that it's targeted Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, of course, and Oman. But I wonder what the message is here, do you think, from Iran in widening that lens, widening the scope of these targets outside of the Gulf?
Yeah, it's what's often called the escalatory ladder, isn't it? You target just a couple of Gulf countries in the beginning. It's been Kuwait, it was Bahrain. Now it's up to a former U.S. base, Al Tanf, inside of Syria. That hadn't been struck before. It's interesting that Saudi Arabia hasn't been struck so far in this round, and Saudi Arabia normally considers itself at the top of that escalatory ladder. But Iran threatening to hit ports in the region, threatening these sort of highest value, most prized asset that's mostly been outside of the war in Saudi Arabia, Yambo port there, where the oil exports go through, where exports to the Red Sea and imports, frankly, as well, come into the country, come into the region, as well as Jebel Ali, a principal port in the Emirates, where you are. That would be a huge blow for the Emiratis if Iran was to continue to go after that Hamad port in Qatar. Just a number of ports in the region. And I think if we think back to those days at the beginning of April, just before the ceasefire came into play, I think it was the 8th or 9th of April, what Iran did on the last night of strikes was to strike sort of the deepest and send significant messages of what it was still capable of. So it sent the warning then, and now it's saying, we can do this. We're putting it on the table. So yes, we're in a cycle of escalation.
Let's discuss this and more with CNN senior military analyst, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, retired Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, thanks very much for joining us. Many of these bridges in Iran that were targeted by the U.S. were on routes connected to the city of Bandar Abbas, which is home to an Iranian military naval base, as you well know. What does that signal to you about the U.S. strategy that's unfolding right now?
Two things. Well, first, it is going to attempt to cut off, to kill the assets that could be used to close the Strait of Hormuz. I've been to Bandar Abbas before the revolution. Obviously, it's a very important naval port for the Iranians, and cutting it off has high military utility. So point one, go after the places where the Iranians have weapons systems that help them close the strait. Point two, in general, going after infrastructure like bridges, roads, puts economic pressure on Iran. I think that
it is kind of funny when the only time these guys recognize infrastructure being struck as a war crime is if Iran is retaliating to American war crimes. It's so funny. They just straight up will be like, in a brilliant and excellent move, the United States of America is tactically engaging in what people might consider to be a war crime potentially, but those people are naysayers. We like to call it economic pressure. But of course, Iran's retaliation is war crime of the absolute magnitude. No one has ever seen a war crime so bad. Like in the same fucking breath, they're like, yeah, when we hit those bridges, it's awesome. It's glorious. When they retaliate in kind, well, then that's unacceptable. Very bad. Someone should put an end to it. Maybe we should blow up more bridges, actually. We should blow up more Iranian bridges.
is part of the administration's strategy here to get Iran back to the table. In a phrase, what they're doing is escalate in order to de-escalate, meaning go after economic targets, military targets, put pressure on more attacks with the hope that you can then de-escalate and the Iranians will come back to the table. That's the strategy.
And as you know, Iran is now retaliating big time with attacks on various U.S. military assets across the Gulf region. The Iranian military claims it targeted a U.S. air base in Qatar and for the first time a U.S. base in Syria. It also says it destroyed a long-range radar system and several U.S. refueling aircraft. If all of this is true, Admiral, how...
Remind me, which organization did Wolf Blitzer work for in the past? Oh, well, I don't know why you asked that question. Is it perhaps... I wonder if you're asking me that question because Wolf Blitzer may have in the past worked for a little-known organization by the name of AIPAC. Yeah. Perhaps that's the reason why you're asking that question. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at a CV. It's in front of me right now, and it says he worked for AIPAC. So I guess maybe that's why You know, I mean, we still love Wolf Blitzer. Put some respect on it. You know, that's my GOAT. But yeah, he was the GOAT of APAC for the longest time. Anyway, Mark Ames says the U.S. war of aggression on Iran is what Nuremberg trials called the supreme international crime among war crimes. The U.S. assassination of a head of state, Khamenei, is a grave war crime. These fresh U.S. crimes are never acknowledged as such in the U.S. media or among serious people. Under the law of armed conflict, some power plants and bridges can be lawful military targets if they provide a concrete military advantage, but threatening to destroy all of them to force negotiation would likely violate distinction, proportionality, and military necessity. Wow. You think? I for one, am shocked to hear that when Donald Trump said we're going to wipe out the Iranian civilization permanently, that was a threat. That was a direct genocidal threat. A direct genocidal threat issued by the American president, who has continuously taken credit for war crimes that he has committed and also continued to posture as though he will commit more war crimes. IRGC claims to destroy U.S. drone depot in Bahrain and main artificial intelligence center in Bahrain, claiming it was used by the U.S. to commit war crimes. Yeah, but when we do it, it's well, depending on the severity of it, it's either a war oopsie or a war good. You know, when they do it, it's a war crime. When we do it, it's a war. I don't know, a war law, a war legal thing that people do during war. Or if it's a really bad one, it's a war oopsie. Like the Minop school is now in the bracket. It went from good thing to, it went from war crime to war fine, and then it turned into a war oopsie. That's the most you're gonna get. Anyway. Yeah, a war oof. A war goof and a war oof.
How does this impact the U.S. military's abilities in the region?
So far, we have sufficient combat power in order to overcome the level of strikes you're seeing from Iran. And let's be honest here about the numbers. The U.S. is launching dozens and dozens of strikes a day at this point, far less than during the initial wave, but 100, 200 strikes a day. Iran is responding with 10, maybe 15 strikes. So over time, that's going to...
I personally love CNN always showing our healthcare lighting on fire. I like that at least we know where the money's going. You know what I mean? Because you might be thinking, like, I pay so much in taxes. Where does it go? Well, you're watching it light on fire, okay? It's fantastic. That's your public schools, that's your roads, that's your healthcare. Because obviously money is not infinite. It's got to go somewhere. And it's clear that this is what we keep putting the money into. There it is. Up in smoke. That's clean water in Flint, Michigan. That's the potholes on your roads. That's the unreliable infrastructure. That's the unhardened infrastructure when anthropogenic climate change kicks in and you have increasingly worse tornadoes, hurricanes, and the like, flooding. That's your retirement lighting on fire. That's your lack of internet when you're thinking to yourself, I live in a first world nation, as I thought I lived in, and yet I don't have reliable public transit. I don't have decent infrastructure. I don't have decent internet. Where did it go? That's where it is. It's awesome.
Favor the U.S. military capacity to continue these strikes. However, it does show the Iranians are increasing their ability to go after their neighbors. That ought to concern us, because if they start going after Gulf oil and gas infrastructure, that'll have big economic downside for the Western economies as well.
Yeah, so far they're going after U.S. military sites in these friendly Arab Gulf nations like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, elsewhere.
Yeah, sometimes you can actually watch it blow a load in real time. The UAE MOD claimed that they responded to an accidental fire at a warehouse at Zayed Military City. It turns out there were 3 warehouses, and they look more likely to have been struck by missiles or drones. There's the CRAM footage if you want to watch that too. Here it is. Another drone attack has hit the U.S. base in Erbil. The CRAM system failed to intercept a likely Shahed 136. That's fucking crazy. Dude, these people have to live like this, man. That's crazy. Imagine you're just at a fucking wedding. You're at a wedding in Erbil, and all of a sudden, the sky lights up. You hear brrr. You hear a Chuck Schumer style fart in the distance. The type of fart that you've only heard from Chuck Schumer when he's, on the podium on the floor of the Senate. You look up at the sky. It looks like fireworks. It's not. It's CRAM. That's American tax dollars being lit on fire, failing to intercept. Brrr. I feel like a CRAM should be able to hit a drone like, what? Are we this cooked? I mean, we have watched many CRAM failures in the last 140 days. Yeah, $27 a bullet. That little fireworks show that you watched is, a couple grand. CRAM is dog shit. Here's the problem. Most of these defenses are dog shit because defense is mostly just a hope and a dream. Anti-air defense is hope and a dream for the most part. It's quite difficult. Like it's actually a fairly impressive feat that the Iron Dome system is so successful at intercepting rocket propelled grenades and small missiles and things of that nature. It's just difficult. It's difficult to intercept these things, especially when Iran knows the technology that's readily available and has designed around it. Because the nuclear proliferation doesn't stop with just building a robust arsenal of nuclear weapons, right? You're a scumbag that belongs in jail. Lemao, Young Turks are named after a terrorist group. I'm pretty sure Ahmad will remove this before he sees this, but I hope he sees it. Wait, why am I'm a scumbag that belongs in jail because of what? The Young Turks? I don't even work there anymore. Is that what we're doing now? We're just shouldn't you be at least a little bit in favor of free speech? I thought this is what the right wanted. The right has pivoted away from, we love defending free speech to why. No, I don't. That's why I asked you. Why am I a scumbag that belongs in jail? Please enlighten us. Is this still Epstein's fury? Well, not really. This is post MOU, so I don't know if they're going to come up with a new and cool name or if they're just rehashing Epic Fury. Woke MAGA, folks. Woke MAGA. I like that we also are talking about, bipartisan consensus around lighting this guy's tax dollars on fire. And I'm in the process of explaining to him that, this is why you don't have reliable infrastructure. This is why the rural hospitals are closing in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? And God forbid you or a loved one has a medical incident. They have to literally send in a helicopter to probably fly you, 100 miles away. And he's like, no, I hate you, man. I fucking hate you. We could find an area of agreement here, right? This is supposed to be an area of agreement. I thought we all agreed that it's just totally unnecessary to waste billions of dollars every day on senseless war that only hurts you, whether you live in Europe or America. I assume you probably live in Europe, but I mean, you're still cooked, right? You're cooked because this fucks your gas prices, right? This makes your life harder. And you didn't have a say in it at all, and neither did I, neither did any of us. That's kind of the point. And it's strange that instead of like identifying that issue and recognizing how it harms him personally, he's like, nah, I'm going to fucking shoot the messenger. I hate this guy. And I asked, what is the problem? And he said, you know why, and that's it. No response. Very strange.
In the region. These are all very close friends, allies of the United States. The U.S. has major bases in the United Arab Emirates and in Qatar at Camp Asaliya, the El Udeid Air Base. I've been to those facilities. They're really home to much of the U.S. military central command in that region. And the Iranians keep attacking those U.S. sites. This is very significant, isn't it?
It is indeed. And I want to draw a line under one other kind of troubling item that's surfacing, and that is Iran starting to talk about closing not the Strait of Hormuz, which they've effectively done, but closing what is called the Bab el-Mandeb. It's at the very bottom of the map you're showing, at the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula, the bottom of the Red Sea. They've got the Houthis there who have capability to attack commercial shipping. If you close that choke point, that closes effectively the Suez Canal right under the word Israel on your map. That is a major global choke point, just like the Strait of Hormuz. If the
Iran claims U.S. soldiers captured or dead. CENTCOM denies it. Yeah, I don't believe that unless we see it. No U.S. troops in the region recently killed or captured, says CENTCOM. U.S. military has denied Iran's claims of killing U.S. soldiers in Syria, according to a CENTCOM post on X. Iran said it killed U.S. troops stationed at a base in El Tanf. You're always pointing fingers, and when you point one, three point back. Do I think the government spends our money properly? No. But you call for violence among other people. I never said shoot the messenger. I never called for violence against you, but yeah, you are about to get linked up for going to Cuba on a humanitarian defense against communism. And I try to respond, but your chatters just lit me up. Wait, I always point fingers. Yeah, I point fingers at the super powerful and super wealthy institutions, organizations, and corporations that dominate society, that have designed the society in an unjustifiable way, in a way that is so unjustifiable that even you recognize that it's like totally fucked up. That's it. And then those guys turn around and tune up people like yourself into believing that I'm actually your enemy. I'm not. Dude, you are the super wealthy socialist? Yes, brother. I am the wealthiest person in the country. You're right. You are a hypocrite. Brother, number one, even if I was this like immensely powerful and wealthy person that you think I am, okay, that still wouldn't change what I'm talking about, would it? Like, let's say I was a billionaire, right? And I, as a billionaire, for some weird reason, spent every waking moment talking about how's your multiple houses doing? I don't have multiple houses. I have one house for myself and my family. Again, don't you feel like if you have to make up all of these different things to get mad about, wouldn't it be far easier to either not pay attention at all or to actually suck it up for a brief moment, pay attention to what I'm saying, and then recognize that we probably agree on a lot more than you think we do. Okay? That's the question. That's the question. Because I didn't make you broke. I didn't make you angry. Someone told you should be angry at me instead of the people that I'm pointing the finger of blame at. And oftentimes, the people that I'm pointing the finger of blame at are very powerful individuals, Elon Musk and the like. Okay? They run the show. They run the society. And they don't like it when they're acknowledged for their contributions to the pain that you experience on a daily basis. So they very easily turn around and boost the algorithm in a way to just be like, you know who's actually the real person that is responsible for all the pain you're going through? Some random fucking Twitch streamer. He's the wealthiest and most powerful person. He's a super wealthy socialist and a hypocrite. Unless they're on Joe Rogan, which I'd bet $20 this dude loves. Yeah, Joe Rogan, who is 1,000 times wealthier than I am, constantly will, turn on his podcast and talk about how all these like pedophilic billionaires are dope. He has them on his show. What? I will concede, we do probably agree on a lot, but you've been doing this for a long time. You are part of the society, but dude, you are a hypocrite. No, brother, I'm not. And if you scratch the surface of your commentary that you've been conditioned into believing, you would recognize that that's not the case. Okay? It's okay. Ask yourself why. If you agree with me, what has primed you into thinking that I'm your enemy? Now ask yourself, the other people that have primed you into getting angry at me, do you agree with them? You just posted a clip saying you joined the JRE camp again because he said something you agree with against Vance. Yes, that's called a joke, my man. That's called a joke. I'm capable of doing those. I promise you, the people that you have been conditioned into hating are capable of laughter. They're capable of joy. They're capable of cracking fucking jokes. They're capable of being sarcastic. Not everything that I say is 100% serious, okay? I know that my tone doesn't change too much between sarcasm and serious commentary, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. But another way that a lot of people prime individuals like yourself into thinking that I'm your fucking enemy, even though you literally probably agree with me on 99% of issues, okay, is by doing that. By claiming that I'm actually incapable of nuance, incapable of hyperbole, incapable of the utilization of a metaphor, incapable of fucking crafting jokes every now and then, being sarcastic, you know? That's what this is. You're being duped. It's okay. You can continue hating me. That's fine. You know, it's not the end of the world. There are plenty of people who do. But when you come in here and you listen, all I ask for you is to just take a deep breath and listen to what I have to say and make up your own mind. You're an independent thinker. I believe in you. Okay? I believe in you. I believe in your capability of thinking independently. Someone primed you into thinking that I'm your fucking enemy. Just stick around, listen to what I have to say. Don't pay attention to the chat. And make up your own mind. Plenty of people in this community have come in here just like you, with this idea that I'm like this horrible person, this monster. I'm constantly agitating for violence. And then they listen in, day out, and they begin to realize that maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were told that I was something, that I represented something that I actually do not. Okay? Don't be a sheep. Be an independent thinker. I know you can.
Can push the Houthis into doing that. You've opened a new front, a Western front, if you will, in this war. So that is one to watch and one to be concerned about in the weeks ahead.
In his address, his primetime televised address last night, the president said one sentence, and it was a total of about 7 seconds, we checked, related to the war with Iran. In his nearly 27-minute speech overall. When he first announced he was going to give a televised address, I thought it would be on the war with Iran, but it wasn't. It was on election, so-called election interference. Was that, in your view, a missed opportunity for President Trump?
It was, and the numbers are very clear on this. This war is unpopular across the entire political spectrum. President Trump's own popularity overall is as low as it's been throughout his 2 terms of the presidency. And I think Americans just don't have a sense of what's the exit strategy, what's the end game here. And when you start getting those questions from the public, that's the time to do that nationally televised address and reassure people and tell them you have a plan and tell them what the next step is. I'm with you. That's what I was hoping to hear when I
mean, when these guys are even being subtly critical, slightly critical about what Trump is doing, which, by the way, is only in the interest of one country and one country only, Israel, right? Europe doesn't like this. Europe wants a ceasefire. The Gulf nations don't want this. They want a ceasefire. They don't want their critical infrastructure at risk of being bombed by Iran. Iran doesn't want this. Well, Iran might want to continue it, to be fair, so that they can actually force their position of leverage, because they are, as long as this war continues, obviously they're punishing they're punishing Donald Trump. Bro, EU still blames Iran? No, that's EU leadership. Okay? It doesn't matter. EU leadership saying, oh, this is still Iran's fault. Iran, please just eat the missiles and shut the fuck up, is not actually a convincing message for the average person. Okay? The European Union is a consortium of vassalized states. Their leadership are not going to speak out against the United States of America. They're not going to speak out against Israel. But that doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, because Europeans living in Europe, in the European continent, in the countries, they have independently arrived at the correct conclusion that this is happening because America is forcing Iran's hand. And also, there's tremendous volatility regardless of who's to blame, right? Tremendous volatility when you don't have access to diesel, when diesel prices have skyrocketed. That means commerce is going to, that means inflation is going to happen. Because diesel is necessary for logistics. Those trucks that carry your food into your grocery stores, they rely on diesel. They rely on diesel prices maintaining some level of stability. If it's no longer stable, if the prices are going up because there's still the same level of demand, but not enough supply, of course, diesel prices are going to skyrocket. Farmers can't run their tractors. Logistics companies can't fuel their trucks. There's not enough fertilizer to go around for agricultural output.
Caught a snippet of a televised presidential address. It's about elections. Those are important, but I think the public would, at this point, like to hear what's the next move in the Middle East.
Yeah, in his 7 seconds on the war in Iran, he basically said the U.S. is winning. That was about it. All right, Admiral James Stavridis, thank you so much for joining us as usual.
Who is Andy Burnham, the man who went from Manchester's mayor to the UK's next prime minister? All right, before we get to that, let's cover some more situation monitoring related events and incidents, specifically monitoring the situation. I guess, should we even look at this? I mean, I basically covered this. Like, China has the largest oil reserves known. The largest strategic oil reserves in the world, and they cut down their imports by a third in order to maintain low prices, so that all the readily available oil in the marketplace could go to other countries, and that they would not have to pay so much money. I guess that's the video, right?
I know AI.
That's the whole video, I suspect. Yeah, China is propping up the world economy by importing a lot less oil. When this article first came out on June 10th by the Wall Street Journal, this was considered a very controversial one. A lot of people got mad and they said, how dare you? The only reason why China is they're cutting their imports by a third is because they simply can't get it because the strait is closed. But the reality is there was still oil that was, that was being shipped out to other countries. And the reason for why is because China was no longer purchasing that oil. That's what happens. They stabilized prices for the rest of the world and actually gave Trump a good deal of time as well in the process. Now, this also gives China tremendous leverage over the oil markets, because if they were to increase their imports once again, I mean, this would be a tremendous pressure point. A tremendous pressure point that they could apply by being like, look, we gotta refill our strategic petroleum reserves. We're buying the oil again, and they have tremendous purchasing power as opposed to all these other countries. All of a sudden, those other countries are going to be competing for a lot less oil, and in that competition, they're going to have to chase the highest prices possible, and the cost of Brent crude is going to skyrocket far beyond the levels that it already has. Everybody's fighting smart except the U.S. Yeah. Two factors, Cena Tuesday says, two factors help cushion the economic fallout since Trump's February attack on Iran and the Hormuz disruption, strategic oil reserves, and weaker Chinese oil demand. Both are now moving in the wrong direction for Trump, with Chinese imports just reportedly beginning to recover. Yeah. The moment that China says, I've had enough, or decides we need more oil, we need to, we care about our national security, we care about our national interests, we have to refill our strategic petroleum reserve. Sorry, rest of the world. It's fucked. All of a sudden, prices are going to skyrocket. I don't know what the Iranian internal dynamics that this person is talking about are, but there is this that I wanted to get to. Mortaza Hussein reports the Gulf bases are being hit harder in this round because the previous campaign failed to destroy the Iranian missile cities and also relied on a division of labor between the U.S. and Israeli air forces to suppress launcher fire, which meant smaller salvos. Similarly, in the 12-day war, missile attacks from Iran towards Israel took place in larger salvos because U.S. aircraft were not involved in suppressing launch sites, disabling bases closer to Iran and forcing operations to be carried out from more distant locations or carriers would also further reduce the sortie rate and the intensity of the current campaign. So if you're wondering why Iran is just like cratering bases and stuff, and you feel like it's an unnecessary thing that they're engaging in, it's because the longer it takes and the more risky it is for the U.S. Air Force to potentially fly over near Iran or on top of Iranian missile sites, the harder it is and the more risk it carries. And that's the reason why Iran keeps dumping drones onto these strato tankers or even an F-35, as we saw one squawking just yesterday. That's it. The Iranian Navy released its first ever official strike footage on a commercial ship showing a drone attack on a Thai-flagged oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz after it allegedly ignored warnings and transited without Iranian authorization, according to Tasnim. It comes as Strait of Hormuz traffic continues to collapse. On the 16th of July, just 8 confirmed vessels crossed the strait, a 3-week low. Most used the Iranian route, while none transited via the Omani route, according to marine traffic. Brent crude has now risen above $88 a barrel. Here's the footage. So, Thai Pro US, no, none of the flags are relevant. Okay, the flag of the ship is totally irrelevant. It's they're carrying oil. The country that it's going to is more relevant, and the logistics company that it is actually a part of is more relevant than anything else. Anyway, here's Trita Parsi talking to Katie Halper. Let's take a look.
You had a recent article. You published it on Monday on responsible statecraft, and you write, for all practical purposes, the U.S.-Iran memorandum of misunderstanding is over. The dispute over how to manage the Strait of Hormuz in the interim has pushed the two sides back into open war, but to what end? So can you expand on this?
Yeah, so look, I mean, they're targeting each other, perhaps not at the exact same level as we saw during the war. I've not seen the U.S. strike at Tehran, for instance. But nevertheless, this is certainly not a ceasefire. Trump is speaking as if he wants to go on with this for weeks. He's talking about the other side in a manner as if it's not worthy to make a deal with them. The Iranians are shooting at ships. Trump is reimposing the blockade. The U.S. withdrew the general license that allowed the Iranians to sell oil. So for all practical purpose, all the things that this memorandum was supposed to put in place are more or less gone at this point. But I'm not seeing what will be achieved militarily within a reasonable time frame that would change the fundamentals of the situation so that if they go back to the table, it would break the deadlock and the U.S. would be able to get its way at the negotiating. I just don't see it. In fact, when you take a look at the starting point of this, the U.S. is in a worse position in many different ways. Not that it's weak, not that it's not stronger than Iran, not that its economy or industrial base is not much larger. But at the end of the day, if the Iranians close the strait, which they now have done, oil prices are going to go up again. And last time, the world had actually very high inventory of oil. The U.S.'s strategic petroleum reserve was essentially full. Now it's been, to a large extent, depleted. And during the MOU, only 5% of global capacity.
And that's precisely the reason why post-MOU, America's actually coming at this war from a much weaker position, because they don't even have a cushion. They have nothing to rely on. And every day this war continues, every day that oil tankers don't transit through the Strait of Hormuz is another day where America is burning its strategic supply. And it's nearing critical levels. It's getting closer and closer to critical levels every single day. Now, of course, as we've talked about already, America could just stop exports at some point, which would destroy the global markets. Okay? If the United States stopped exports to what do you call it? My phone died, so you're against war with Iraq or Afghanistan or Iran, and I agree with that. So are you for with Syria or Yemen, or Shin Hillary assassinated Gaddafi? Is this why you're a hypocrite? I do think we could agree on a lot. You jump to call me the woke left, but you've made these arguments in the past. Wait, what? Brother, I'm going to keep it $150 with you. I think you don't know what my position is at all, because you just described a bunch of things that I don't agree with. Are you for with Syria or Yemen or Shin Hillary assassinated Gaddafi? What? No, I wasn't in favor of any of the American interventions in the region. I'm always against those American interventions. You think I like Hillary Clinton? What the hell? I think Hillary Clinton should be in prison.
Capacity of inventory was restocked. So we're not talking about a situation in which during that month, the restocking became so significant that Trump could comfortably go to war again. No. So once oil prices start to go up again, the runway that the U.S. will have economically before that crisis, the economic crisis becomes acute, is much, much shorter. Add to that we're only 2 months away from the midterm elections, whereas we were 10 months away from it.
Why do all your haters know nothing about you? Because they don't actually listen. They come in here to just be like, you're a fucking piece of shit who needs to go to prison, and that's it. And the only interaction they have with my commentary is from a network of people who have made it their lives mission to just lie about what my positions are. Professional misunderstanders. They just watch clips. They watch clips. They don't even pay attention to what I'm actually saying. And they have no charitability, because why should they have any charitability to me? I'm just a random fucking rich socialist hypocritical asshole from their perspective. And then that's it. But if they were to actually sit here and listen to what I have to say, they'd be like, okay, what the fuck? I don't know why I hated this guy. Okay, then maybe I don't understand your positions. Didn't you campaign for Hillary against Trump? I do listen. I'm listening now, so clarify your position for me. Yes, I hate Hillary Rodham Clinton, and yet I understandably said that Hillary Rodham Clinton would be far better than Donald Trump, which I stand by. It's a position that I stand by. Donald Trump in the first term did a bunch of horrible things. Hillary Clinton would be horrible too, but at least, less horrible than Donald Trump, I guess. But I did not campaign for Hillary Clinton. I just, endorsed Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. It's also 2026. I can't believe you're still bringing up 2016.
When the war started last time, you realize that Trump, if he thinks there's a military solution, he needs to achieve it in the next 2 weeks. And I just don't see any way that there's any type of a military strategy that he has.
Like, for example, if you're confused as to why this Iran stuff is happening right now, you can directly blame Trump 1 for it. Because what did Donald Trump do? Donald Trump was always Israel's most loyal servant, okay? Even during Trump 1, he was Israel's most loyal servant. He was far more pro-Israel than Barack Obama ever was. He was far more pro-Israel than most likely how Hillary Clinton would operate. As a big if, but there's never been a president like Donald Trump, with the exception of Joe Biden, I guess, that loves Israel. Okay. Donald Trump came into power, ripped apart the JCPOA. Okay. And instead of continuing to further normalize relations with Iran, ripped apart the JCPOA, implemented the Abraham Accords, which is a direct through line to October 7. Okay. And recognized the permanently annexed territory of Golan Heights that Israel had seized illegally from Syria, and totally wrote out the Palestinians from the conversation, which is part of the reason why October 7 happened. He was horrible. I mean, he killed Qasem Soleimani. He assassinated Qasem Soleimani. That was a huge deal as well at the time. He did a whole He was a warmonger. Moved the embassy to Jerusalem. That was a huge deal as well. Blow after blow after blow to any confidence people might have in negotiating with the United States of America or Israel. It emboldened Israel tremendously. He did that. That was just Trump 1. Biden's biggest issue was that he continued with Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda instead of reversing some of these dangerous decisions. And then Trump 2 came around, and, well, here are the results. Donald Trump greatly escalated, got goaded into striking Iran and decapitating its leadership, committed a litany of war crimes, basically backed Iran to a corner that they had to fight out of. And it turns out they did have more smoke than we gave them credit. Backed Iran into a corner, and Iran had to close the Strait of Hormuz. For 47 years, Iran had not closed the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump reversed that overnight by launching Operation Epic Fury. So if you're wondering how we're currently staring down the barrel of an energy crisis at the global level, Donald Trump did that. Long sequence of mistakes, giving Israel no accountability whatsoever, allowing them to do whatever the fuck they want over and over and over again, from Trump 1 to Trump 2. And these are the results. So yes, while I think Hillary Rodham Clinton is a warmonger of epic proportions and is the butcher of Libya, at the end of the day, she probably would have been a little bit more restrained than Donald Trump. 2026 is like me bringing up next Tuesday. Yeah, Obama ran a drone war against the Middle East and still didn't bomb Iran. I get that's terrible by him. Honestly, I think Trump's second term is not good at all. I think his first term was bad too. So why take a political stance at all? I personally think all of our politics are corrupt by warmonger Zionists. Do we agree on that? I mean, I think that people who have unlimited fealty to the nation state of Israel and its greater Israel project to varying degrees are in positions of great power, and Israel does have an outsized influence on American politics. Yes, dog, you called me a terrorist. Why do you think people call me a terrorist? It's because of the, I guess, agreement that we have over the outsized influence that Israel has on American foreign policy, and even the influence that Israel has over domestic policy. You're repeating positions that you heard from others who fucking hate me for a position that you and I agree on. This happens way more frequently than you would think, by the way. There are so many people out there who literally are just like, yo, fuck Israel. I can't believe Israel is like goaded us into waging war in the Middle East. This is fucking unbelievable, blah, 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 all this shit. And then they will, without a shred of irony, without even recognizing what they're doing, will turn around and be like, you're a fucking terrorist, piece of shit. Where do you think that commentary comes from? It comes from other people, either willingly or without realizing what they're doing, channeling the Zionist Hasbara machine, internalizing it. It's that packaged with Islamophobia. That's where it comes from.
Or has come up with that actually would achieve that. In fact, when we look at what's happening, it seems like he's just angry and he's telling this military, I want to see constant reports that you're bombing something in Iran. But, just blindly bombing stuff, even if you destroy a lot of stuff, does not in any way, shape, or form amount to a strategic victory. That is the key lesson that should have been learned at least by the previous war. And one of the big differences, of course, now is with the hindsight that didn't exist back in February, it should have taken into account that hindsight and come to a different decision than what he made.
So why isn't this being incorporated, this hindsight?
I have no idea as to why. I have a guess, and I guess is that Trump is looking for a constant flow, an assembly line of good news and progress in diplomacy. And if he doesn't get it, he grows tired, he gets frustrated, he gets criticized by his hawkish base, by the pro-Israel crowd, and he loses his patience and he says, screw this, let's go back to war. He just does a 180. And after a while, he will get tired of war because that's not going to give him any benefits either. And then he's going to try to go back to the negotiating table.
Right.
My fear for him, though, is that next time he wants to go to the negotiating table, I'm not so sure the Iranians will come. They will drag, or even if they show up, they're going to drag it out even further. And I would suspect that they would not agree to a deal or perhaps even agree to come to the table until right before or after the midterms in order to maximize the political damage done to Trump.
Right. Yeah. Very frightening. It reminds me actually of something that a few years ago now, I was interviewing John Mearsheimer and I asked him about why the proxy war was going on so long, given that Ukraine was losing. And his point was that, like, one of the things he thought, obviously there's interest in bleeding Russia, et cetera, but was that people were so cocky about being able to win it. And they're so embarrassed by the fact that they haven't, that it's almost like, what is it, sunken cost theory or something? Like they keep fighting and they're keeping fighting in the hopes that they'll win, but it's just dragging it on. And in some ways backfiring. At least in the case of Trump, I think you could say it's backfiring.
I certainly think so. And I think he has a degree of confidence because his core supporters and base, the ones that are currently at least the Fox News watching part of his base, now the Tucker Carlson watching part of his base, are still with him, despite all of these different developments. But we got to keep in mind, Trump used the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to buffer against the worst economic consequences of this war.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of different things. Of course, also a lot of oral interventions in the markets in which he just suddenly said, we're going to have a deal tomorrow, all of these different things to manipulate the market. I don't think that's going to work again, nor does he have.
You think he's potentially continuing the war so he can use it to to implement martial law if things get bad during the elections? I don't think so. I think that it's far more consequent. Like, continuing this war is far more consequential for him. It makes it less likely because he doesn't have any popular mandate whatsoever. He's draining his base. He's draining his base of whatever kind of support that he could have. In order to implement martial law in a country like the United States of America, you either need to implement like a devastating false flag attack, or you have to have a base of trust. I'll give you an example. The Iranian government would have collapsed in the last round of protests if they did not have the capacity to mobilize their popular base of support. Because the IRGC, regardless of its many critics, both inside of Iran and outside of Iran, still has a popular base of support, like the 20 to 30% of Iranian society that give it its legitimacy, that give it its power. Donald Trump, every single day that goes on, is losing his popular base of support, and especially you got to also factor in the reality that Americans are not capable of mobilizing in large numbers like that in any way, shape, or form. It makes it all the less likely that Donald Trump can make these crazy decisions like implementing a martial law.
Enough of the strategic reserve in place in order to be able to shield it away. And if this thing drags on till the midterms, I think that's where, he will really hurt with his own base, something that he so far has not seen.
So interestingly, and kind of surprisingly, honestly, Senate Democrats blocked an effort to advance Trump's National Defense Authorization Act, bringing the
Yeah, I don't care about the rest of this stuff because the NDA and all that stuff, we've covered it extensively. I just wanted to hear what Trita's thoughts are on the latest in the tit for tat. You keep saying 20 to 30%, bro. 13 million people showed up to Khamenei's funeral. Khamenei's funeral. I think it's worth revisiting what you think you know about that country now. No. I said 20 to 30% base of support before Operation Epic Fury. Of course, that number has grown a lot. All right.